Hello everybody and welcome to another video. I'm another Magento dev, and in this video we're going to be looking at theme development tooling and the setup of a theme, and specifically the setup of a theme that utilizes Mix, Webpack Mix, Laravel Mix, whatever you want to call it, to compile your SCSS, move the relevant files into static, and also how you can get that browser auto reloading. Towards the end of the video, I start talking about how we can utilize features of Mix within a deployment pipeline. But I'm going to do another video on that, I think, as well. But I touch on it and you'll get the gist, so stay to the end to watch that. Smash a like on the video and subscribe. Okay, let's just run through really quickly a real simple theme install, because I don't think you can go over that enough. It's one of them things that most devs don't do that often, setting up a theme, and there's things in there that catch me out every time. So there's certain files that are required, certain ways of deploying that theme, getting that theme to be registered within your local project and all that type of stuff, which it's useful to just run through, to be honest. But I'm going to run through it in conjunction with installing Mix to enable compilation within the and local development as well, to speed up local development and enable compilation of SCSS and JavaScript, etc. And actually, to be fair, when I'm using Mix, lack of compilation, and I'll touch on that in a second. Previously on other tutorials, I've favoured Gulp over Grunt, and now I think I've gravitated towards Mix over Gulp. Just it was looking at it again and looking at Mix specifically, it really made me sort of reconsider what needed to be compiled, how it compiles in a local project to aid sort of development pace and things like that. And Gulp was overkill. I think Grunt is overkill as well, what Magento obviously ships with. So we're going to go with Mix, and I'm sure everyone will really enjoy it as much as I do. So let's start by knocking a theme together. So in this way of installing a theme, I'm going to do it using the config file. So in this config file here, so I'm going to call my theme. So what was it? This is one of the things that I often forget, and then I think, why ain't it compiling? So I have to then log into the admin locally and all that type of stuff. But I find it's really helpful. Bang this in before you start to tell Magento that you're going to be looking for this new theme. And I've already sort of preempted. I'm going to call it the project. I'm going to call the vendor Adam, and the child theme of Luma, Luma child. And what you get on the front end is, if you try and run the site, theme directory in past, which is basically because the theme doesn't exist, and it's I've registered it there in config. So we'll just get rid of that for a second. So dead simple. Let's just make a start by creating a folder. So that's the vendor folder, which comes first, and then we've got the actual theme folder, which I said I'd call Luma_child. You can call it whatever you want. Obviously, you can call both of these whatever you want. So the first place I would start for this particular type of sort of install or build, if you like, is get your Webpack Mix. Get your Webpack Mix file in there. I'll just drop that in there like that. And this is your config file, basically. This is like your gulp.js. So the key takeaways from this are the vendor name and the theme name. Webpack Mix, it ships with Browserify. Browserify for your local development, but anybody who's tried that with a Magento, sort of a local Magento instance, and has found that it basically doesn't work. Trying to get Magento 2 working on port 3000 when you're also trying to utilize the back end and the site in sort of on a more sort of on a nice URL, like using Valet, like your project.test, for example, is an absolute nightmare, because of the way the cause policy works and the way static assets are sort of generated and then presented to the front end. So what I do with this is I sort of override that with webpack's live reload plugin. And live reload is something that works in conjunction with a nice simple browser extension for your browser. I'm using Brave here, but Brave is sort of a version of Chrome, and obviously this works in Chrome, and I think that obviously there's a Firefox version as well. But live reload, and the little symbol's that little symbol there. So it works in conjunction with that, which we'll come on to in a second. So I'm going to be outputting my styles SCSS, and I'm going to be outputting it to this web CSS directory in my theme, which I'm going to sort out in a second, as just styles.scss. And it's important that you know what you're doing with those things, because you need to reference them in the build of your theme as well. So I'm just going to throw in, and this is ready to go, by the way, so there you go, I've got my live reload plugin in there ready to go, and I'm just going to throw in a web directory. And in this web directory, this is what your general build of your theme. So I'm just gonna delete these for now because we'll want to watch them generate in a second. So anyway, your theme folder will look a bit like this. You've got empty, all of these. I've just put like an app.js in there, ready for my JavaScript, any jQuery, anything that I want to write in there, just a styles SCSS as well. But you're probably going to look at a folder structure like components, objects, pages, and then have it all compiling within your styles SCSS, all importing within the SCSS file, this styles SCSS file, and outputting compiled, or at least transposed to the CSS directory. Right, so that's a dead simple sort of web directory there. The next thing that you want to have in there are the core theme files that are required for a Magento theme, and there's a couple of them. You've got registration, and theme. So registration there is just referencing the theme that you're installing, similar to the one in config, similar to the path in config, starting from front end, and the theme XML there. This is an important one because it's the title of your theme, so this is how it appears in the admin, and it shows you sort of tell it which parent you're using there, and as I said, I'm using Luma. Obviously this could be blank if you wanted to. You change that reference in there. I'm going to use Luma. I think it's always a great starting point. So that's good. And here's a laugh. So media, you always need this. It's fucking stupid, but there you go. Media with a little thumbnail. Basically, I'm just using the one from Luma. Magento kicks off if you don't have that present, and then also according to the Magento exam. But there you go. Composer JSON as well with, the usual sort of gubbins in there. You can get a boilerplate version and just wham it in. It's good practice to have that in there. Right then, so in terms of linking this all together, I would always have as a base a Magento theme folder. Whether you're going to write the majority of your theme, whether you're making a hell of a lot of theme changes to Luma or you're not, you're going to need at minimum your Magento theme folder. Obviously you build this over time, over the development cycle, and you've got Magento catalog, maybe Magento sales rule, all that type, and Magento catalog product configurable. You've got loads of different places where you can extend core Magento files that I found in vendor. A lot of people, myself, I like to use, if I'm working on one area like product or something, or the product or something, I'd like to write a module for that and override XML and template files within a module, because then you can utilize blocks and things like that to bring in extra functionality. But as a base, I mean, some people like to just go the whole hog and use the theme for everything. I'd rather break it up based off the logic. But as an absolute base, I would have this folder, and the reason is because it's where you'd link your style sheets. It's where you would link your JavaScript as well. So in here I've got a little boilerplate, which I like to use that meta tag to get rid of all the pinch zooming and stuff on mobiles, what clients go mental about. And I've got my CSS file. So that's the one that I mentioned is going to output to here with Mix. But if you don't do this, obviously your CSS file, when it gets pushed into static, you're not gonna see any effect, and you're gonna be scratching your head as to why that's the case. So this is basically set up now in terms of the Magento theme. Now we're going to sort of move back into getting webpack mix sorted. So what you're going to need, it's a package JSON is you're going to need to put a package JSON in there. The package JSON is going to tell Node what to go fetch when and what modules you're going to need. I am going to put tell you what, I'll just get rid of this. We don't need this one. I am going to put this up on a little GitHub repository so people can start from sort of this boilerplate if they like, but I thought it'd be nice to walk through it. So in here we've got our deployment scripts and our development scripts and all that type of stuff. We've got to install it. So the first thing I'm going to do once it's all in there is I'm going to jump into this directory, which is my theme directory. Now, you can put all these files in your root if you'd like to, and then the only thing you'd need to do to be aware of is to change the paths here to make sure that they're not relative, they're relative to the root directory. I've got these as being relative to my theme directory. The reason I've put it in a theme is because what happens if I want more themes? What happens if this is a multi-site? I'm going to have to run webpack in each one of these themes whilst I'm developing it, because each one potentially is going to have separate CSS files that need to be deployed into the theme and then deployed into different places in static as well. Because obviously if you've got multiple themes in here, this is what I deployed earlier, you've got multiple themes in here, they need to be deployed as multiple themes. So having it globally, having webpack globally ain't going to work for you. But if you're only ever going to have one theme and you're certain you are, then and you want it in the root, you can bang it in the root. That's no bother. Tell you what, before we move any further, if you've got a live Git repository going on your project and you're sort of converting a project or something like that, you're going to need a git ignore in here, because otherwise it's going to pick up node modules and it's going to make your life a bit of a nightmare. So this is a nice boilerplate for mix basically, and you'll see in a minute it's going to catch a few things. So I'm going to run yarn first of all, and it's going to go and to npm, and it's going to install all my packages. Okay, that's done. So that's generated obviously a yarn lock file for me. Now I've installed everything, and node modules folder. So the next thing we're gonna test out is just by and you can see, I'll show you. You can see this in here. So I'm gonna run. I'm just gonna run yarn mix first of all. You can see it's just doing its thing. It's pretty quick, 2.21 seconds, and that's created for me a mix.js map file, which don't ask me what that does, not a clue. I think it's got something to do with local development and being able to see the actual SCS file, which I'm gonna the path to the SCS file within development, within your browser inspect element, and it's generated my my styles, and you can see it's generated my styles based off that style that I had in here. Right, so that's generated everything, and what I've asked this script to do specifically is generate CSS. And as you can see, actually, this is one thing I was going to mention. This isn't minified. Now, you can minify it if you want. I've set it not to minify, and I've done that on purpose because when I deploy my Magento, eventually to production environment, all my CSS is going to be minified. I don't need to do it twice. I don't need to do it in here. I'd rather have, whilst I'm working locally, unminified CSS, even after I've compiled it. I know I'm going to be working mainly in here, but I'd rather have it unminified in here just for debugging purposes, just to make it readable, just in case. Now, don't get me wrong, I would never look in here for any CSS errors or mistakes or anything like that. I would look in here, but there's no need to run that minification here because Magento is going to do that for you. And as part of the script here, or the settings, we're mapping. The only thing that we're doing here really is mixing the CSS, is compiling the CSS or moving the CSS, building a CSS file. Everything else is just a move. Look, I'm copying images from here, if I've added any, to the static path, which is the static path to my theme on the in here. Public static front end. And then I've got an images folder which my images will be put into. As you can see, there's already images in there, which is great, so it'd merge my images into the static path as well. And the same would happen with JavaScript. As you can see, it's put a blank JavaScript file in there, it's moved it. Again, I'm not minifying any JavaScript because I will do that in production and on the actual server. I would rather have it unminified at this point for debugging, because this is all about setting up your local environment. And the final thing is it's just going to move the CSS from here into the CSS file in, where is it? It's in here somewhere. You have to take my word for it. Yeah, it's in here somewhere. Where is it? CSS there, right at the top. So it's moving it. It's moving my CSS file once it's compiled. Right, and there's obviously a reason for doing this. Now, I don't have to do that. Webpack Mix will work absolutely fine without these 3 commands in. Like it'll minify my theme in here, and Magento will work fine as well. Because when I'm running Magento in a development environment, every time I refresh the browser, for example, it will deploy the theme. It will copy all the assets from the theme into static. The reason I'm doing it kind of semi-manually here, or I'm forcing it, is because I want my browser to update on the fly and detect a change. Like I said, I can Magento will take care of it all for us, and it does on deployment as well, which is why I'm not minifying anything either. Let's just jump back into the browser. Let's give this a refresh. There we go, it's come and it's already picking up my style. Now I'm just going to show you how to get live reload running. So once I've got this working, I'll just go quickly into here. Now if you just keep an eye on the code window there. Right, got an error. It can't find anything running. It can't find a live server running, and there isn't one. Look, because I only run yarn mix. I just run yarn mix before, which is a single process which does the job. It compiles everything. What I want to be running is yarn watch. Now yarn watches for changes, and can you see it's like it's compiled it once, everything I need, and now it's watching for changes. And now if I go back to here and I try and switch live reload on, it's detected it's okay, and it's just added this little script block here at the bottom of the page. So now if and I'll just make this so we can see both screens. So now if I make a CSS change, for example, that's a little too good, does it? Make a CSS change, so we'll change that to blue. It's not picked up the change. Why not? Oh, silly. Look where I am. I'm in the wrong CSS file. So I can close that. And I want to be in my SCSS file, obviously. Daft lad. Make a change. Detects the change. And look out, I think it changed before I'd even finished, before I'd even typed it. Look. It's pretty amazing how fast it is. Yeah, so it really does speed up development, and I find this faster once you're into the project. Obviously, I've got one thing going on in here at the minute, but once you're into the project, I find this method of of running a local environment really fast. It doesn't have any sort of quirks in terms of deployment or anything to actual Magento. There's a couple of extra things that you might want to do here. If you're working collaboratively in a team, it might be a good idea to ignore your style CSS and then run Node and run what you would do here is run, and you can see it in here. I've got it ready. You could run node development or run node production, depending on. I mean, you can change this around if you want. I've just got the same because my staging servers and my production servers are basically the same. I'd rather have them the same for all kinds of reasons. So I just run mixed production in my development environments via deploybot or something like that. And then you could actually build out. You could basically, before you run bin Magento setup upgrade, what you want to be doing is compiling your CSS. So that means you don't have to have it in the repo. So it means that locally, if a developer's running yarn watch or yarn mix, you're going to get deployed CSS into this folder. You're not going to be sharing that file constantly, pulling and pushing it, because you're going to get unnecessary merge conflicts. They're easy to get around, don't get me wrong. You just discard them and run your mix again. But when for conciseness of your development environment, you could ignore those and then just run mix in production. It's dead easy to do. You just basically, you've got to have a node installed on a server and yarn, but you can basically run it. I think I've got an example of it if you just bear with us a second. Okay, so here's an example of a deployment environment. Obviously I won't show you the stuff at the top because it's sensitive, but as part of the deployment scripts, and this is deploybot, obviously you can deploy HQ, anything will do it. Any deploy sort of service will give you the ability to add certain scripts. So all I'm doing here is I'm installing Node 17, using Node 17, running yarn install in the environment, and then yarn development, which is that one there, which is mixed for production. So it's basically compiling it's going to the server with this folder empty, hitting the server, building this folder, and then as we come further down, then it's running Magento deploy commands. So then it's running Composer, then it's running setup upgrade, and then crucially it's putting static content in the right folders, but they already exist because they've been generated seconds earlier via Node. So you can be clever about it. If you wanted to just push that back and forward and push it up to your development environment, obviously you're going to have a style sheet that's nicely linked to your header, so you aren't going to have a problem there either. It's all going to work. Great, I hope that's been useful for you. I probably should do a separate video on deployments, to be honest, because it is quite it can get quite in depth. I'm going to get this code up on GitHub, and there should be a link in the description by the time this video goes live. Yeah, cool. Pop in the comments what you think about Mix. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, because I'm going to be doing more videos to try and make Magento better for us all. Magento open source, always open source. Yeah, great stuff. Have a good one.